There we are. Now we're recording.
Hey. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I want to start by saying Happy Mexican Independence Day. I am Mexican and it is Independence Day, and I don't really think we are completely independent, but I still celebrate my country, my birth country. So just a little note there. I am honored to welcome you to our Voices from the Frontlines panel. As Mano said, my name is Palmira Figueroa, and I have been the co-coordinator for this campaign for about 3 years now. And here at SJF. This campaign and all of the panelists that you're going to listen to today are recipients of the campaign and are going to talk to all of us about base building, about grassroots organizing and base building, about the efforts to fund the power building tool that is base building organizing. And this campaign has been raising funds for 3 years, for granting for 5 years organizations and organizers that are doing this type of work. And just as a small note, you will hear tonight, I think, about how these powerful organizations build community love, how they are creating resilient Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities through organizing, through strengthening their skills and knowledge and expanding their base so they are better equipped to fight against many things, against these racist systems that are all around us, but specifically, and also to fight against the rise of white supremacist movements in this country. So, it is an honor for me to introduce this panel, to welcome you. And before I introduce our amazing panelists, I wanted to acknowledge the whole SJF team for doing this work, but especially I wanted to do a little shout out to our grants team, to Megan and Shawit, since without them, we really couldn't be doing this work, this important work that we're honoring tonight by inviting our panelists to share their amazing work. And with that, I will introduce and read some bios for our amazing guests tonight. First, I'm gonna introduce Sierra Parsons from WA-BLOC. Sierra has worked with WA-BLOC since 2018, supporting year-round programming, and is currently their communications and development coordinator. Sierra grew up in Tukwila and graduated from the University of Washington this past winter with a bachelor's degree in psychology. Her favorite cuisines include Ethiopian and Thai food, and she spends her free time watching the Great British Baking Show on Netflix. Then I'm going to introduce Elise Davies from PAALF. And Joy is a Cincinnati native who graduated from Miami University with a BA in political science, and from Parsons School of Design with an MA in theories of urban practice. She is a founder of the award-winning Film Design and Total Lab, and is an adjunct professor at Pacific Northwest College of Art. Joy Alise serves as the executive director of the Portland African American Leadership Forum, that stands for PAALF, where she works to help our Black community imagine and build political participation to achieve the alternatives they deserve. Then I'm going to talk about Monserrat Padilla from WAISN, Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network. Monserrat is the director of the network, of the WAISN network, a powerful statewide coalition of over 200 organizations building the defense line against ICE and CBP by growing community-based programs to protect, support, and mobilize immigrant communities. Monserrat has been organizing LGBTQ, immigrant, and communities of color on the ground for over 10 years to build collective movement power. Monserrat was named as one of Seattle's most influential people in 2018 by the Seattle Magazine, and was also the recipient of the Leadership on Immigration Reform Award by National LGBTQ Task Force in 2015. Then I'm going to go to Tonatu Fatuesi from Utopia. Tonatu is a Samoan Fa'afafin Tongan lady, was born and raised in Tafuna, American Samoa. She feels lucky to serve her QTPI community in the Pacific Northwest. She is an avid reader, a connoisseur of boxed wine, and a favorite auntie to many nieces and nephews. Donato joined Utopia Seattle with a strong background as an administrative professional in the warehousing and transportation industry as an accounting major. Having previously served 6 years in the board of directors and having served dually as board treasurer and finance director, she's excited to use her skills to carry forward the work of Utopia Seattle and strengthen its organizational capacity as the operations manager. And with that, I'm going to pass this to my colleague and friend Mano, who's going to help us with this panel.
All right. Thanks, Palmira. These are some pretty amazing folks. I'm really excited to share, to be the conduit where we share some of the work that they're doing. So let's get into it. We have a lot to talk about, and we will start with WA-BLOC. And please let me know. This is Sierra. Sierra, please let me know and tell me when to move the slide forward.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Mano. Hey, everybody. My name is Sierra. I'm representing WA-BLOC this evening. WA-BLOC stands for Washington Building Leaders of Change. Founded in 2016, we're a grassroots board rooted in Southeast Seattle, embedded in Rainier Beach High School and Emerson Elementary School. And there's a photo of our beautiful team there, all of our shining bright faces. Mano, you can move to the next slide. So here's our mission, vision, and values to get you all a little bit familiar. Our mission is to build and nurture intergenerational leaders through transformative education and revolutionary social action. Our vision is for Southeast Seattle to be an epicenter where Black and Brown folks thrive. And some of our values include being healing-centered, youth-led, creative and innovative, which now is the perfect time to be doing that. Collective leadership, we don't operate internally as a hierarchy. We operate on a flat leadership model. So everyone's voice matters, and we try our best to remain unapologetic. And then I'll just quickly go over some of our programs. The first is Freedom Schools. So Freedom Schools was first developed by the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee during the 1964 Freedom Summer in Mississippi. So for the past 5 consecutive summers, WA-BLOC has partnered with the Children's Defense Fund to bring 100 K-12 scholars a modern Freedom Schools, which is now a 6-week high-impact, culturally responsive literacy program to combat summer learning loss. We facilitate a space where scholars can identify ways they can make positive differences in themselves, their families, communities, countries, and their world. The summer builds up to and ends with a day of social action where scholars come together and organize against a social justice issue they've identified within their community. In the summer of 2016, our Freedom School scholars organized around transit justice, which acted as a catalyst for a policy change that ultimately resulted in free Orca cards for all students in the Seattle Public School District. And the rest of our programs operate during the school year. We support both of our schools that we're embedded in with implementing restorative justice, which is the second program listed there. We train both students and staff in circle keeping to build community, address conflict, and heal. We also support this work at a systems level, which means advocating against the use of exclusionary and punitive discipline practices which contribute to the school to prison pipeline, and we provide restorative practices as an alternative to that. Next up, we got our block mentoring, organizing, and events, sorry, Mano. And that includes 2 mentor groups for young Black femmes and young Black men. The block party, which is hosted at Rainier Beach High School every spring, includes 40 workshops that are led by community members, and they're on various topics led through a social justice lens. And we also use the block program umbrella to center youth in any and every organizing effort that comes up throughout the year. Lastly, our Homework Center is an after-school academic support program where students at Rainier Beach can drop in for one-on-one or small group tutoring in any subject. And WA-BLOC's Homework Center is the only academic support program available to the students at Rainier Beach High School. So really happy to be continuing to put that program on every year. And that's it for WA-BLOC.
Yay. Thanks, Joy. I'm sorry, Sierra. I was looking ahead to Joy, who's next.
Okay, I can go ahead and start. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sierra. I would say your slides are beautiful. I appreciate learning more. This is Joy again. Pronouns are she, her. I'm the executive director here at PAALF, and then our sibling org, PAALF Action Fund. Is it possible to go to the next slide? We have two entities, technically and legally. The first one, PAALF, is really where we do our leadership development work, and then PAALF Action Fund is where we house our organizing programs and our electoral justice programs. But for the most part, people see us as one large entity, but legally we have these two that I wanted to point out. If you go to the next slide, I'll share a little bit more about, and maybe just go to the next one. So about us, we are about 11 years old now. We were founded, gosh, way back when, actually a part of a national network to help establish these African-American leadership forums in a few cities around the country. We've evolved as an organization, which has been really exciting. Back in, gosh, 2014, 15, after we just finished a really exciting protest to fight for more affordable housing in the historic Northeast area where Black Portlanders lived and thrived for many years. We embarked on this really interesting journey where we did this really long visioning project called the People's Plan, where we talked to folks and asked them to let us know what their vision for a Black utopia here in Oregon. And all the data that we got and the insights really transformed the organization. And we've evolved to be a grassroots organization instead of a grass tops, where we now are centering folks who are most impacted by the work. And we see ourselves as a radical Black imagination organization in the sense that we spend a lot of our time dreaming up new realities and using really interesting tools to get us there. But as you see on the screen, our vision is pretty simple. We envision a world where people of African descent enjoy the rights, resources, and recognition to be a thriving, resilient, connected community. If you go to the next slide, our vision is to help the Black community here in Oregon imagine the alternatives that we deserve and build our political participation and leadership to achieve those alternatives. And I'll talk a little bit more about what that means. And if you go to the next slide, since we have two entities, our mission on our other side is almost exactly the same, except they do a little bit more civic engagement work. So sorry, I have so many slides, but I'm going to keep talking. So please keep me honest if I go over, Mano. But we also at PAALF, we adopted a Black queer feminist lens to our work, which very simply means that we bring folks who are at the margins to the center within the Black community. So for us, what that means is that we understand that liberation for all Black people can only be realized by lifting up the voices, experiences, and prioritizing the issues of historically silenced and vulnerable groups within the Black communities. And I'll just name a few of them, but there's quite a few. So for us, we look at centering folks who are queer, trans, gender nonconforming, femme, poor, disabled, working poor, undocumented. It's not enough for us to just say that we serve Black folks, that we really need to check our own privilege and not fall victim to respectability politics and thinking that there's one way to do this work when really there's multiple ways to do it. And we want to make sure that we're centering folks who are going to be impacted most by the decisions or by the policies or whatever that we're pushing. If you go to the next slide, let's see if the GIF comes through. Oh yeah, it does. Look at those eyelashes. But just being simple is that we believe that, you know, nobody's free until everybody's free. So really taking those words on the screen very seriously in terms of how we do our organizing work and how we actually make decisions. If you go to the next slide, I have so many more gifts for y'all today. We also believe that if we work together, you know, we can win, which is very simple, but it reminds us that, again, there are many ways to do this work. And we also know there's many ways to be Black, particularly, you know, all globally, but looking at Oregon in particular, there's many ways to be Black as Black people. So being able to be really develop strategies and tools that work for many different folks is important for us, and something that we're learning quite a bit in COVID, how to, and the wildfires and everything else that's happening, how to adjust and make sure that we're meeting people where they're at. And then I'll quickly say, because I'm sure I'm almost running out of time, but if you go to the next slide, you'll see that we implement this process called, oh no, I think something is, my pictures may not be coming through, but an integrated voter engagement model. Ooh, just kidding. And they did come through in a beautiful way. But what that basically means is that we believe that the work that we do requires us to do leadership development work, community organizing, electoral justice. And we're very mindful that in election years like this, tons of resources and attention are being put towards electoral justice and voting. And why we think that's important, we think that's one tool, and it's only as strong as our leaders and only as strong as our organizing to hold electeds accountable. So for us, we see all three of these things being like different, I guess, prongs to like a stool or something like that. Like we're only able to achieve what we need to do if we have, you know, really strong organizing, but if we only focus on voting, we're not going to get to where we want to go. If you go to the next slide, I'll quickly say some of our programs. We believe a lot of kind of with our radical imagination, we do a lot of visioning, we use a lot of art. So we do projects where we photograph, you know, 100 Black femmes in Portland to celebrate their leadership. We're working on creating a Black cultural center in Northeast Portland. We're doing some environmental and climate work, both getting involved with not just African Americans, but looking at the entire diaspora and who's affected most by the things that we're dealing with right now around wildfires, for example. If you go to the next slide, we also do some really interesting work that is new for us around defunding the police. We recently became an abolitionist organization, so the strategies and the things that we're pushing are 100% to abolish police and ICE and build a new public safety system that works for its people, that's not focused on harming and violence. So that's been a really interesting campaign, as well as some other really just fun stuff in terms of growing and learning together. We have a leadership academy that we've now gone through. I think we've had about 101 folks have gone through it, where they learn more about what it means to be a transformative Black leader versus a transactional one, and how to use those tools that I mentioned before and those values to really make change in the community. And if you go to the next slide, that's just a quick picture. We have some social justice fund staff members who've gone through this project with us, so it's really exciting to be on this panel. But I guess lastly, because I'm talking a lot, if you go to my last slide, a big thing, like I mentioned before, is that we want folks to do more this year than just vote. We know voting is important. We know that our liberation as Black people is not going to be tightly, solely, connected to voting. There's other things that we need to do, and using this as a tool, but not the end all be all for our liberation, is super important for us. But yeah, if you go to the next slide, you can reach us at paulfactionfund.org to kind of connect with us. We do have membership programs for Black folks, as well as some accomplice programs for non-Black people who still want to get involved and are ready to do more work than just being a stereotypical ally. So that's all I got. I probably talked a lot. Sorry about that.
That was great. Thank you so much for sharing. Next up, we have Monserrat, or I'm sorry, yes, Monserrat. Monse, are you able to unmute?
Yeah, thank you so much, folks, for having me here today. My name is Monserrat Padilla. I am one of the co-directors for the Washington Immigrant Solidarity Network. We're a statewide network of almost now 250 organizations across 26 counties. I'm also undocumented and unafraid, transgender and unashamed. And a little bit more about myself. I came to this country when I was 2 years old. I came with my mother, who for the next 10 years of her life worked at a sweatshop and worked pretty much from 4 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the morning until past the sun was down, 12 o'clock at night. And there was this one moment where I remember waking up in the middle of the night and seeing my mom across the hallway, looking at her fingers and crying in pain. And so for me, that was my experience growing up. And today, while we're living through global uprising, fires, people losing their jobs, what reminds me and brings me, back to why I fight is that moment when I saw my mom in pain because of her work. And so that's a little bit about just what grounds our stories as WAISN. It is those stories that we understand that more and more of those things will happen but this time with a target over their heads, with Immigration, Custom Enforcement, and Custom Border Patrol targeting and persecuting, creating suffocating conditions that our families can survive and thrive. And so a little bit about the network. We came together shortly after the election results. We had an amazing ad hoc steering committee of around 10 folks who knew and understood that they were not going to be able to do this alone, and what this administration was going to throw in our direction was going to be something that we've never seen before. And from there, the network came together. We started off with around 50, and then every time Trump tweeted against us, we grew to 75. He tweeted again, we grew to 100. Every single opportunity he came to attack us, our communities had our backs. And so today, we can go to the next slide. Before I go into the sourness of where we're at, I want to just talk about the beauty of what we've been able to achieve. And one of the quotes that grounded us really in 2019 after so much pain, and also to this day that continues to ground us, is a quote of Maya Angelou that says, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust I rise." And so that really just tells you more about what is the spirit that WAISN comes to. Anytime that a member is trying to build along with us, it's about solidarity. And we always ask people, why are you here? And if they give us a savior answer, we ask again, why are you here? And until we really are able to understand that they understand that their liberation is intertwined with us, then we can work together. And so that's a little bit about WAISN. Here you see us mobilizing at the SeaTac Federal Prison after we heard that immigrant mothers were torn away from their children, and over 10,000 people showed up at SeaTac Federal Prison to end their detention. We also have folks who have accompanied community members to their courthouses. We have immigrant youth rising up after Trump tried to terminate DACA, and after the Supreme Court was still undeciding about DACA. And so overall, we've been really grateful to have the support of community, and at every strike, we continue to build more power. So if we can go to the next slide. A little bit more about the network. So like I mentioned, we're over 250 organizations who make up the network. In the last 4 years, we've been able to grow to 4 amazing, beautiful staff, all queer identified, all femme, and gender non-binary. And beyond that, the 250 organizations help lead the network. We have 6 organizing programs, which include Rapid Response, Hotline, Labor Immigration, Social Justice Technology, Immigrant Youth Organizing, and Policy and Advocacy. And the bread and butter of our network is our hotline. I want to give a shout out to Judy, who's a hotline volunteer, and other folks who are on this call, who are volunteers and have heard the stories of communities. For us, our hotline is our ear on the ground, is where community calls first when immigration has come knocking at the door. And is where community calls first when people have turned them away because they were undocumented and they were hungry, and they were turned back because food wasn't available for them. And so for us, we as a network are committed to ensuring that while we do not provide a service, we're here to ensure that the tools are available so that they can fight back and survive for their families. And so if we can go to the next slide. But I want to tell you what has been happening over the last 4 years. Over the last 4 years, we have just seen the deportation force increase in its levels of violence, and we continue to call for the abolishment of ICE, abolishment of CBP, and the defunding of police. I think today I'm a little emotional because we have heard the breaking news of I can't even say the word, the hysterectomies that are happening in Georgia. And for me, it has been paralyzing to just let that sit down. You know, that we have always said that we were heading in that direction, and we're there now. And so we've seen broken windows. We've seen U.S. citizen children being kidnapped from their parents. We've seen children in detention. We've seen the single largest U.S. state raid in Mississippi that kidnapped 680 people while at work. And so the violence continues to grow from this deportation machine. And through this uprising, we have seen how even our citizen siblings who are uprising in solidarity with the movement for Black Lives, how they too have been picked up in similar tactics that immigrant communities have been picked up. And so if we go to the last slide. And so today, a little bit of where you can see us. If you call us, letting us know that immigration enforcement is happening in Spokane, in Benton County, in Yakima, in Pacific County, in Thurston County, we will have someone who will have your back, who will show up to your community, document immigration, and essentially be the folks who are in between you and immigration agents to ensure that your family is kept safe and that you're ready and equipped to fight back. And so that's a little bit about the reach of the network. And I'm really grateful to, again, be here with others who are building power across our state and across our region and across our community. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Monse. That was great. I'm excited to introduce our last panelist, Donato.
Talofa Bulavinaka Malo Lele, Kia ora, Yorana, Aloha Hafadai. My name is Donato Fatuesi. I am the operations manager at Utopia Seattle. I've now been involved with this organization for now 7 years, actually, and have been hired on full time into this role in just 1 year ago. It's so amazing to be here and to share this panel with so many wonderful organizers that are leading this work. Utopia Seattle stands for the United Territories of Pacific Islanders Alliance. We were first formed in 2009 here in Seattle, founded by Taffy Johnson, who is now our executive director. Our mission at Utopia is to create sacred spaces for queer and trans Pacific Islanders. Mono, you can move over to the next slide. Through community organizing, community care, cultural stewardship, and civic engagement. And how we do this is through 3 main program areas. Thank you. So our main program area is the Sex Workers Empowerment Initiative, also known as SWAY. We also have our Community Organizing and Culture Empowerment program. Each of these programs are very deeply interconnected and help to uphold the 4 pillars of our work that I mentioned as part of our mission statement. And Utopia works through a very unique cultural lens that aims to elevate the social justice work that through liberation of queer and trans Pacific Islanders here in Seattle, as well as across the state. So the scope of Utopia's outreach has now grown very exponentially to include many chapters, not just across the nation, but also across the Pacific. So we have numerous other organizations that work under the Utopia network in San Francisco, Las Vegas, Alaska, Portland, San Diego, to name a few, and as well as Australia. Mana, we can move to the next slide, please. So the first area of our programming is the Sex Workers Empowerment Initiative. And through this program, we help to connect folks with both lived, current, or former sex work experience to resources that help to build pathways, but also helps to ensure that they're working in conditions that help to reduce harm, but also maintain their safety. Next slide, please. So many programs fall under this scope of work. It includes our monthly street outreach program, individualized case management, monthly transaction support group, our new Possibilities Clothing Project, which helps to provide clothes for folks for job interviews and such, our online sex workers work campaign, our legal clinic, sexual health resources and testing, our reproductive work, and Utopia also serves as one of the chairs for the Trans Economic Empowerment Coalition. Next, please. Our next scope of work includes our community organizing work, which is mostly focused on civic engagement work. Mano, if you can move to the next slide. Here we help to push out census education, voters education, and registration resources, housing justice, but most importantly, our trans and gender nonconforming leadership cohort, which just started its second cycle this year. So we have currently 15 individuals who are trans and gender nonconforming involved in this cohort, and helping them to give them the tools and the resources necessary to build their own political power in whatever industry it is that they serve in. So we don't require that folks come from any specific background. We try to work collectively to recognize systems that oppress us and develop ways that we can work to address a lot of those systemic issues that exist. Moving on, please. Lastly is our cultural empowerment program. So because we operate from a very unique cultural lens, it's very important for us to pay homage to the work of our ancestors that not only honors ourselves, but our ancestors as well. And some of the ways that we do that is through our Talanoa dialogues, our Cutie Pie biannual retreat, which has now been postponed due to COVID, but we're working on ways that we can continue, you know, just like everyone else, push out our programs in ways in a pre-COVID or in a post-COVID world. Real Talk Cutie BIPOC monthly support group. We serve on the Climate Justice Task Force. We have language revitalization programs, our annual TDOR ceremony, our annual TDOV campaign, and our annual Trans Week of Resilience campaign. So what does all of this look like post-COVID, right? Our staff has grown very exponentially within just the past year. Last year alone, we had on board just our executive director, and our team has now grown to include 7 paid staff members. And that has needed to happen through COVID as well. It only further exacerbated the need to hire on more people to do this amazing work. And what does that work look like? Next slide, por favor. So lots of amazing things have needed to happen, and our budget has grown from last year. We had projected about $350,000 up to $580,000 a year. As we're preparing to roll out next year's budget, we're now anticipating upwards of $800,000 to help to support and sustain this work. But through COVID, number of areas of programs that we have been pushing out, I just want to talk quickly about how we've been able to push out over $100,000 of immediate cash assistance to folks impacted by the effects of COVID-19. That includes 400 Cutie Pie individuals over the course of 4 months, 6 weeks and 58 volunteers serving 742 hours in our weekly food distribution program that has helped to support 600 families on a weekly basis. And we're currently instituting a food voucher program that will help to make sure that families can remain fed, pushing out free PPE supplies to folks, health and sanitation supplies, as well as medication, especially to our sex worker community who have been left out of the stimulus, but also for whatever their circumstances are, have also needed to work throughout this pandemic, and helping to ensure that they have resources that reduce harm and help to ensure that they remain safe. We also serve on the NHPI COVID-19 task force, which helps to sort all of and filter the messaging that is coming from the very top of this administration, and pushing the relevant information out to our communities in a way that gets that information out there, but that is also culturally competent. But yes, that's us. We are a team of 7 individuals and all leading this work with a number of volunteers helping to make sure that we can stay supported, but also get resources out to the community. And now, wrapping up COVID-19 into our frame of work, we thank you all. If you want to learn more about our organization, please visit us at www.utopiaseattle.org, or find us on social media at Utopia Seattle. Thank you. I hope I kept that under 5.
Yeah, a little transparent facilitation is all right with me. No, I think this is great. It was wonderful learning so much about you right before we go deeper into the questions and have discussions. As I've mentioned to up top before we really got going, please make sure to add any questions that you might have to the comments. We will try to make some time towards the end for the panelists to answer these questions. They are some pretty amazing people dealing with some really hard work in the time that is not situated for it to, yeah, it's just, things are just very difficult right now. So my first question to all of you is, how is your organization supporting mental wellness and healing for yourselves and your communities? And, you know, I guess, is it okay if I call on?
I'm fine popcorn style, or if you want to just call out names.
Yeah,
sure, I'll go ahead.
Yeah, please.
So mental health and mental awareness, especially through this time, has not been very easy for many folks, right? We're operating through a pandemic. Conditions are changing in the home. Folks are being either laid off or needing to modify how their work looks like from home. Personally, it hasn't been easy for me. You know, my living situation as a person of color who is Pacifica, we live in a multi-family home. So even having the space right now at home, you know, everybody shut up. It's a mess back there, to be honest, you know. But to be able to respect each other's boundaries in that way, you know, and trying to draw the lines of work and being able to still care for family has not been easy, but our leadership at Utopia has been very intentional about finding ways to do that, which include hazard pay, you know, give us our coin, moving meetings around to accommodate for us, and also having important discussions with our funders as well, that, you know, conditions are changing for the folks that are leading this work at home too, while still trying to meet the deliverables that are expected in a number of grants, right? So yeah, that's my spiel.
I can go next. So yeah, times are crazy right now. But, our restorative justice team recently started a Black Healing Circle series. So restorative justice, I mean, is so relational. So doing it virtually has been a challenge, but our team has risen to the occasion, has done a really amazing job continuing to engage the community in restorative justice. So once a month, they host an intergenerational 3-hour virtual space for folks in the Black community. And we're not like neighborhood specific or anything because it's virtual. Word of mouth, you know, posting on our social media, just inviting anyone who identifies as Black to explore their identities and what it means to heal, because that looks different for everyone, especially right now. And then for our employees, we recently developed an employee wellness program. Oh my gosh, so proud, because we're such a young organization, but I mean, shout out to like our finance director and being so amazing, like keeping all the budgeting together. But each employee gets reimbursed up to $100 each month for wellness services to offset the emotional and physical labor that goes into all the work we do. So that's been really awesome. And yeah, we've just been really happy to be able to provide that to our team in these recent months. So that's what we're doing over here at WA-BLOC.
It's awesome. I love the finance team shout out, because they don't get enough love.
I can go next. I'm like taking notes on what everyone else is saying to be like, oh yeah, we should consider doing this. But yeah, if I'm honest, I don't think we're doing it as well as we think we're doing it, to tell you the truth. Everything is extremely, extremely stressful, and it's kind of, this time feels very overwhelming, if I'm honest. We do have some great programs as an org where we have unlimited vacation time here at PAALF, but again, you have to actually take your vacation time. And I know as like organizers, and particularly we're like 100% a Black femme org, we like have to force each other to take some breaks sometimes because we get so wrapped up into helping others that it's hard to prioritize ourselves. So we do have that program. During COVID, we've been doing like adjusted hours. So instead of doing like 40, well, I guess for some 40 plus hours a week, we're encouraged to do 32 hours a week and like have that time and still get paid for the full amount, but really to spend, you know, if you work it out, a day off a week just to try to rest up. But I think what's really key is that, you know, like late stage capitalism is in racism, is anti-Black racism in particular, is just like killing us. It's very overwhelming. Even with those programs, it feels as if, you know, there's never enough time to just take care of yourself. We're doing our best, but I also know that there's so much more to do. And I think just as a culture, even beyond our organization, we just don't prioritize rest enough. And I'm speaking particularly to myself. I sometimes feel guilty when I'm not doing work, and especially in times like this, you know, like there's an org, we have like wildfires and uprising and then COVID, and on top of everything else that is, you know, that the rest of that anti-Black racism that's trying to kill us daily, it's just, it's a lot to manage. So I'm really excited that we also have a program, which I'm for the first time going to be tapping into, is that after you work 3 years in the org, regardless of like what level and what you do, you get to take 3 to 4 weeks off, I believe, of just paid sabbatical time. So the day after election, like literally the next day, I will be out for the whole month of November. And I'm like, I don't even need to know what's going to happen. I'm going to be with family and rest up. But yeah, there's just so much work to do. And I don't know how to change this and unlearn some of this, like both dominant culture and like capitalist like culture of like urgency and perfectionism and overworking and feeling like you have to be everything for everyone. And it's a lot.
Ooh,
That's
I
great.
felt that.
Yes. Monserrat.
Yeah, I can share a little bit more of what WAISN is doing. So WAISN is a volunteer-driven network, but the reality is that our volunteers are putting in full-time staff hour shifts. You can ask Judy and she can tell you how many hours she has put, or other folks who make up the network. But in terms of how we have organized our staff, because we know that everything has been both a figuratively and a realistic fire in our communities. One of the things that we have implemented in our policies, and this is just whether it's Trump or it's whoever the hell's coming next, we have a mental health day, mental health days, one mental health day a week, that if you just need to, you know, cancel your day and just do you, we're more interested in ensuring that the staff can make it another day. And so for us, that's something that we value. We know that, especially as those who are directly impacted, that their survival is how we ensure that we are successful. If our staff can survive, that's how we're changing the world. And so I think for us, that's very vital to how WAISN is moving forward, to ensure that if we can value our own staffers, who we actually have the ability to give some coins and care for, then by de facto, our broader community will be valued because we're walking the talk. And so I think that that's one of the things that I'm really proud of that the network has in our staff policies. Now, how we're supporting our community. Oh my God, it's really, there's just a lot. First of all, mental health is not something that our communities as immigrants, as undocumented folks, one, have access to or value in the primarity, in the, like the first thing that we think about. We go and we think about mental health. Actually, we don't think about mental health, period. And so we have been working to ensure that access to healthcare has been one of the things, but we first started off through our hotline, ensuring that access to food was available for our community, especially during this time. So I'm going to put a link of a tool that we have organized through actually a volunteer who organized this data tool. It's an amazing app that if you look at it, it will tell you access to food, access to healthcare, access to rental assistance funds. and that are available for undocumented communities. And it's in all across counties across Washington state. And so for us, we have been ensuring that there's access to food for our communities as a way to, to ensure that their mental health is stable. And that also just the hotline, people call the hotline sometimes often just to have someone to talk to, because especially during this pandemic, one of the major things that our documented community said time and time again was that they felt forgotten and left behind during a global disaster that everybody else had a safety net program for. And so for us, being able to just have our community members have someone to call to and share that, while our hotline volunteers are not equipped to be able to manage that level of trauma, was just being able to hear people out and for them to be able to support them and connect them to the resources that they might have not identified, but we can, by hearing their stories, can connect them to. And so for us, that has been one of the ways that we've been organizing our communities to have access to mental health, by having someone to talk to.
I love that, Monse. I do also want to add real quickly, because I slipped my mind, but Utopia also provides 100% employee-sponsored healthcare, which has also been like really phenomenal, and it's with the provider that has amazing gender care related services. So that has helped to create an avenue and a safety network for folks to access resources on our team. I'm also recalling a recent incident within our food distribution program in which one of our volunteers in our weekly food distribution program tested positive for COVID-19. And so while our volunteers are leading to help serve and give back to the community that cared for them, during this pandemic, to also be on the receiving end of being exposed to COVID-19, was a huge eye opener for us. We understood the risks, and had safety measures in place to try to mitigate that risk as best we could. But that one individual instance, made us jump and switch gears into, immediate active response. And one of the ways that we did that was to shut down for 2 weeks, making sure that everybody gets tested and is cleared to resume our program, but also to partner with other organizations that helped carry that burden for us while we had to, step away and take care of ourselves. So really leaning into a lot of those relationships is deeply crucial to this work, and it's deeply crucial to base building, period. We can't do this alone. Our liberation is deeply interconnected. And so building these relationships and also serving on a panel like this with amazing leaders who are leading in base building across the Pacific Northwest, I'm taking pointers and making notes hey girl, we're gonna talk and figure out ways how we can best serve our communities at large. So I just wanted to add that as well. And Utopia recently got us all therapeutic Tempur-Pedic chairs for our office space. It seems like a small thing, but oh, that's huge.
Yeah, those small things add up. And thank you for helping me transition to my next question, because all of you were recipients of the base building grant, and we at SJF thought that this was an incredible opportunity for a lot of the organizations that are doing grassroots community organizing across the region to have the resources that they need to withstand these kinds of storms too, and then also to build into the future in a real meaningful way. But how has the current COVID-19 pandemic and uprising impacted your short-term and long-term strategies, given everything that's happening? Who's excited to?
I can start.
Yeah, thank you, Sierra.
Yeah. So I'll talk about, I guess, short term first. So WA-BLOC, because we're embedded in schools, schools shut down in March, and it was unexpected because I remember the week so vividly. It was like sitting there, I was helping support Homework Center, and I'm asking school staff, like, hey, are we going to stay open? And no one really knew up until like the day school closed. Everyone thought for sure that schools were going to stay open. They were going to find some way to keep students in person, but that didn't happen. So we found ourselves having to become more community facing in our programming. And because a lot of our programs, again, operate out of the schools and schools were closed, we had to brainstorm. And luckily our team is so good at mobilizing in response to emergencies. So similar to Utopia, food justice was one of the areas that we identified for our community. 80% of the scholars at both the schools that we're embedded in qualify for free and reduced lunch. So food insecurity is a huge issue in our neighborhood. So we ended up partnering with local BIPOC-owned caterers, restaurants, and chefs to provide hot meals to folks in the Rainier Beach neighborhood. And we were able to reinvest $30,000 into those businesses, which was so amazing because it felt like two birds with one stone. We're providing food justice to the community, but we're also helping to support the businesses in our community that we love, who are also suffering from the impacts of the pandemic and all of the closures for the businesses. So that was awesome. And I felt good to be back out in the community. I think when you have the blinders on and you're so focused on being in the schools and providing for the students, you forget the value that you have in the community. So that was really amazing. And it was honestly great to just see people's faces a couple times a week. Being stuck at home sucks. Being remote sucks, but yeah, kind of bringing back that relational aspect of our work and becoming more community facing was one of the ways that we adjusted. And then in terms of long-term strategy, we're seeing a more clear focus on the self-determination of our community, which is really amazing, in the areas of food justice and economic well-being, and all the ways that those pieces intersect with our educational approach to dismantling all these racist systems. So we're leaning more into the constellation of other community-based orgs in the area, which is amazing, as opposed to the institutions, because we're realizing that while community orgs face different barriers than institutions, we almost have a little bit of an advantage because we don't have to jump through all of those institutional hoops. We can just start organizing right away and start getting stuff going and off the ground. Like, I remember the schools didn't even have a food justice plan for several weeks. We were like, what y'all waiting for? Like, people are hungry. So we were able to jump right in, and they were kind of, and now it's funny now, now they're like, ooh, like we're doing it too. So yeah, that's been awesome. And then also pursuing, more unrestricted funding and building our individual donor base, because that's the funding that allowed us to pull together the emergency response programming and resources that we were able to jumpstart at the beginning of the pandemic. So some good shifts, and I'm really excited for the future because of those shifts.
Yes, amazing.
Yeah, I can share a little bit more about how we have been responding to COVID-19. So, like I mentioned, the hotline is the ear on the ground, and as soon as the pandemic hit, we knew that our communities were going to be left behind structurally and systemically, and what we were working towards, essentially putting literally our voices and our bodies on the line, was to ensure that the society also didn't accept the fact of leaving our communities behind. And so the four major reasons why communities were calling us was first, because they were afraid that they would lose shelter, meaning they were seeking rental assistance funding. The second one was access to food. People were literally going hungry, and they had to make the tough choices of deciding how to spend their last remaining $100. And so we were really advocating for them to continue having that extra funding, and working with food banks to ensure that no person who was undocumented was turned behind.
No.
And so, yeah, I think that was one of the reasons why, for us, that was very important. The third reason why people were calling us is because in their work employment, their employers were not following COVID-19 safety guidances. We had employees who were afraid to report this to LNI or to whatever institution that they needed to report this to ensure that their workplace was safe. And I'll tell you a little bit in a minute of how actually that communities reporting to us clearly identify how people were contracting COVID as we see it now today. And lastly, the last fourth reason was that folks were contracting COVID at rates that we have never seen before. And essentially, they also didn't have access to testing or care once they had contracted COVID. And when they did get testing, they were charged with bills that they just didn't know how to manage, on top of potentially they have lost their jobs. And so for us, the way that we approached the situation was first in terms of economic justice. We, in partnership with the Washington Dream Coalition and Northwest Immigrant Rights Project and other partners, we launched a grassroots fund to essentially provide economic relief for our undocumented communities, knowing that the state wasn't going to do it. And so for us, our initial goal was to raise $75,000. And after 3 months, we were able to raise $6 million from grassroots funds to provide funding for 6,000 communities. It was huge. I don't think, it was just unexpected. I don't even have words for it, but I'm just really grateful. And it showed me that the last 4 years, people have been hearing, their hearts have been changed, their minds have been changed, and they're ready to shut down, essentially. And so I'm really grateful for how that grassroots fund, actually, we used that power that we built through that grassroots fund to then go to Governor Inslee and say, what the hell are you going to do about this? This is still not enough. $6 million is something great to celebrate, but it's not enough. There's over 250,000 undocumented people living in Washington state today, 250,000 undocumented people who most likely lost their jobs and have no other access to safety net programs. And so we went to Governor Inslee, and Governor Inslee had no leadership in his state. While he gave us lip service, he was not enacting the programs that we needed to ensure that communities were fed and had a shelter over their houses. And so part of the work of WAISN was to move this 250 organization network to hold a person who we see as a friend accountable and to call him out. And we launched a campaign that said, Inslee's inactions is costing undocumented workers' lives. So imagine as a governor, a Democrat governor who gives us lip service, that he supports undocumented communities, but still is not walking the talk, and undocumented communities saying enough. And what granted, again, it was those stories of mothers who had given everything. It was the stories of fathers who had gone to work for the last 2 decades and had given all they had in their employment, and all of a sudden had no access to unemployment benefits, right? It was that sacrifice that was not recognized by the state, and it was that sacrifice that was also putting our communities at risk. And so after amazing organizing and holding an immigrant youth, actually on the day that DACA was won, heckling him in a live press conference where he invited us to essentially take the photo op picture, immigrant youth heckled him and said, enough with this, you need to stand up for our communities. And shortly after, he committed to $40 million for our undocumented communities. And today we've been working to launch a program that it will open on April 16 to essentially get 38,000 families who are undocumented a one-time aid of $1,000 for their families. And so that's been a little bit about the economic justice. There's so much more that we're doing for healthcare access, but I just wanted to share that sometimes you need to hold those who call themselves your friend closer to ensure that they're doing the right thing. And so, thank you.
It's the millions for me.
It was just all the hard work of everybody, and just really, really, really grateful and humbled by that experience.
That's so amazing. Really, really wonderful.
Cool. I'm like taking notes as I'm like listening to try to capture it all. Wow. Like, yeah, get that money. I'm very excited. Here at PAALF, yeah, COVID has changed a lot. I think sometimes, you make these beautiful like strategic plans and you're like really proud of yourself and you're like, yes, we spent months on this. And then something like this happens and it just completely changes everything. So I think this time has taught particularly me, and I know some members of staff, to be flexible and to be okay with doing what we can in this moment, but also to change kind of plans. I think I'm like a very planny person. So like to have certain things that, you think you worked on for months completely blow up in front of you. Sometimes that happens and you got to roll with it. So in some ways, I think some of our long-term planning like accelerated in this moment. We always knew we were moving towards getting involved with dismantling the school to prison pipeline, the school to prison and in deportation pipeline. We've always known we wanted to get involved with it, but we had this like plan to do it once we had the perfect amount of staff and the perfect amount of resources, and life doesn't work that way. So with kind of the uprisings, we were able to accelerate kind of our long-term plan into doing some really exciting work on the ground. That has just been really both, I'm like holding both contradictions of being very tired and exhausted, but also very like proud and celebratory of what just some great organizations and groups and community folk have been able to do to hold, you know, our city and state accountable. For us, it accelerated kind of us being an abolitionist org. As a staff, we were all like dancing around it. I don't know if you've been in a place where you all had similar values, but you're like unsure, like at what level do the board, you know, allow you to do some things or say some things. So like we kind of danced around, and then we kind of looked at each other like digitally on Zoom one day. We're like, oh, we're all abolitionists. Why aren't we being more front facing with that and like pushing that? And why are we being so like, why is it so nervous for us, or we're so uncomfortable or mindful of like how our funders would respond if we actually just say pretty, you know, blank and being really honest that we don't want police anymore and that there's something better. So we went through that kind of internal, I guess like growth moment in real time that accelerated it. That was messy, but really nice. We were able to work, and gosh, there's so many folks who've been abolitionists in Oregon and groups for such a long time that we're like baby in this work, but we were really proud to contribute in a small way to pushing for $50 million to be cut from the Portland police budget. We didn't get 50, we got 15 million, which we're still happy about, but we're coming back for, you know, 35 million to be cut in this fall situation. I think they thought they like made us happy and that was it. We're like, oh no, we want 50 million every year until it's gone, if not like accelerated. So that's been exciting from the uprising perspective, is like holding both things of being really excited about some wins, but also being disappointed in kind of some elected officials not meeting this moment correctly, and really still being okay with kind of old business as usual, and not everyone's obsessed with the word reimagine, but not, you know, reimagining what we could do in this moment. In terms of COVID, same thing, you know, we had never planned on doing this type of state work this year. We're, until very recently, we've been a very small organization. I was the only staff member for about almost 2 years here at PAALF. So we're now about 8 staff members, all Black femmes. But we had not planned on doing really big statewide policy, and really wanted to focus more on getting our base and establishing that and growing with our members. But we got a chance to collaborate and work with Urban League of Portland and the Contingent, and gosh, almost like over 50 Black-led organizations in the state, some that I didn't even know existed in other parts of Oregon. That was really excited. And we pushed to get relief funding for the Black community here in Oregon. So surprisingly, we won. I don't know how it happened, but we got $62 million dedicated to the Black community, which is Oregon's first time having a policy where they dispersed funds based off of race. We obviously know people are pretty pissed about it, in the sense that we have conservative folks, you know, writing left and right or threatening to sue, and we're preparing for all of those threats. But we're excited about the precedent that it sets, that it's not enough for us to just say, like, you know, to throw out these beautiful equity words and say people of color, BIPOC, whatever that we want to say, depending on the time, that it's really time to make sure our budget reflects those equity goals that we have. So we were able to work with Representative Akasha Lawrence Spence here in Oregon to really push this like historic policy through. Fingers crossed that we don't have it, that folks don't try to destroy it and sue us. But we're really close to dispersing, you know, $62 million before December, which was a big win for us. And we were excited to leverage some of our campaign tools to be able to make this thing happen. So that's kind of just really exciting short-term things, but also like some things that we thought we were going to do that we just didn't have. Like, there's no way we're going to get them done. And I think that's okay. We sometimes have to readjust and figure things out. Yeah.
You know, Joy, I'm now hearing millions and millions. I'm like, where's our million?
Right? I'm like,
but, you know, aside from that, what's been really, really important for us is leading this work with intention, but also paying very close attention, right? Through our emergency financial assistance program, we've collected so many stories about individuals and the effects that COVID-19 has had on them and their families. And we've been very intentional about boosting additional support for folks that, say, for example, have identified sex work as their main source of or only source of income, right? For our elders, for folks with disabilities, and, you know, pushing more funding to that community that experiences even deeper layers of harm or potential harm. So I just want to reiterate on that point. And my staff has been like really amazing throughout this entire process because not many of us are tech savvy. And, you know, COVID has really stressed upon us the need to learn and adapt new skills that this new world now requires. And it has been amazing for us to see that since March 3rd, when we shut down our office, really shifting our programs to a virtual space. And what does that look like? And how can we still hold support groups that ensure confidentiality and mutual respect can still be upheld with the same level of care, you know, as we reach people in their homes through this virtual space? How can we ensure that what you share here can be kept in confidence? Thinking and working from that lens in that way has just been truly phenomenal. And it's been really amazing to see my staff grow and adapt to those changes, and still excited to see, you know, the works to come, but like the work never ends. So again, thank you so much for sharing.
I wanted to share one quick note before we go into this very next important question, because I got so excited with the millions that like my blood just, and also uncomfortable with just sharing that number. I was like, oh my God, that's just too many millions. But the reality is that for us, we were fighting to ensure that individuals, communities, families, like you know, our deals and our communities had that money first. Like our strategy was to ensure money in communities' hands. But the reality is that grassroots organizations like the folks who are here, we have been responding to this, and we have been underfunded and with no state support. But yet we have been the first responders to fight back against COVID. And so in this next phase of like, now that we got enough money, you know, and not even enough, because there's still much more need for our communities to have that financial economic relief, that we need to work to ensure that these grassroots organizations who have built up these mutual aid networks, who you all I'm sure are part of, these, you know, rapid response teams who you're a part of, to build that power, because we don't know what's going to come on the election day. And so I just want to give a huge shout out to Palmira Figueroa and Social Justice Fund, because we were not able to do this without Social Justice Fund. That victory comes at the extreme labor and you know, late labor of Palmira, putting in massive hours, working in coalition, Social Justice Fund working in coalition with this 430 organizations to ensure communities had money first. And now we need to work to ensure that those organizations who are going to get that money out have the long-term, multi-year funding to ensure that they're building power.
That part too, you know, is very crucial. The multi-year.
So that Donato gets a little bit of things too.
I do my million.
I really love the love. I appreciate this. This is why I do this work. This is why it's important. And like, and I appreciated when we met earlier how you all reminded me that we should be talking about anti-Black racism, you know, and how that is a part, like how we all as organizations should be doing that work and undoing that. So yeah, let's talk about it. How is your organization undoing anti-Black racism and working towards Black liberation? You know, how do you even start building that analysis and build strategies that encompass Black liberation? And is it okay if I ask Sierra to go first? Is that okay, Sierra?
Yes, yes, we'll keep the pattern going. Man, undoing anti-Black racism is embedded in the fabric of our org, and it's been at the forefront of our decision-making since its inception. The bulk of our programming is centered around undoing anti-Blackness with our Freedom Schools summer programming, restorative justice, our new Black healing circles, our young Black men and young Black femmes mentor groups. All those programs are dedicated to giving the young Black scholar the tools to liberate themselves. Dismantling the school to prison pipeline was in our very first mission statement, and we still work towards that goal. We just recently revised our mission statement to be a little bit more broad, because I don't know, some of those like catchphrases get a little corny over the years. That's not to say that the school to prison pipeline still doesn't exist, but I don't know, you know, we outgrew that, okay? And yeah, so we do everything in our power as an org to continue work and gather resources that directly benefit young Black scholars and challenge the institutions we're faced with to do the same. So, I mean, and that's hard because when you're like a more radical organization and you're embedded in an institution that's inherently racist, and they you know, they want us there, but at the same time it makes people really uncomfortable and makes them feel threatened when you're challenging the systems that they're directly contributing to. So there, I mean, you know, that's cool though, little speed bumps along the way, ain't no problem. And then young Black people, you know, they experience policing in most spaces, so focusing on their agency and autonomy and growing their confidence to be leaders and advocate for themselves and their communities is the best strategy that we have for working towards Black liberation. So yeah, just, you know, dismantling anti-Black institutions and developing spaces for Black liberation where Black folks can thrive, and organizing around policy change in a way that our young Black people can get directly involved in and ultimately lead. So yeah, always centering the young Black voice. It's just what we do.
Who's ready to answer next?
Can I
Yes, please.
add on to that? One of the things that I love about the work that we do here at Utopia is that we really focus on centering and uplifting the voices of Black trans women and Black trans femmes who are often victims of disproportionate effects of violence within our communities. We've seen videos of this even happening throughout when the Black Lives Matter movement was at its highest peak. After the recent killing of George Floyd, Black trans women were being attacked. And we operate from an understanding that our liberation is deeply connected and intertwined with that of Black trans women. While I'm not a Black trans woman, I identify as a Fa'afafine, trans woman from the Pacific Islands. I understand that I operate from a different lens of understanding and the way that I navigate this world than that of a Black trans woman. But that also a lot more harm or violence and the vilification of Black trans women deeply exists. And I serve to help to erase some of those boundaries, because I understand that I'm not liberated until Black trans women are liberated in this country. So I just wanted to add that spiel.
Thank you for that piece. Monserrat?
Okay, I can go next, if that's okay. So for WAISN, I think just to share some numbers in terms of like why undocumented communities must center Black undocumented communities. There's over 400,000 undocumented Black immigrants living in the United States today. And we know that while being Black and being undocumented, not only are you afraid of the police, but you're afraid of what interactions with police can mean and can it could mean very much a deportation to a country you probably ran away and were seeking safety from. And it can mean what we already know what engaging with police can engage and entails. And so for us, it's recognizing that we as a broader immigrant rights movement have benefited from anti-Blackness, and that we need to ensure that we don't continue to replicate those structures that have divided our communities up. And so for one of the things that I was not that long ago in a city meeting, and the city was trying to give me the breakdown, the softer version of like why they couldn't, do whatever they needed to do that our Black siblings were asking them to do. And I was like, no, that's not gonna, I'm not gonna stand in front of this powerful community who's asking you to do something. And you need to go back and listen to them and what they're telling you. Like, you just can't come and try to get your cover sheets, right? That's not how this is gonna work. And so I think it's very important to know what is our role and where do we step in and where do we need to just step the hell back, right? And let others lead those conversations. And so in that particular meeting, a Black immigrant sibling was talking about just the need to invest more city money to Black immigrant organizations and Black-led organizations. And while this particular official was sharing, this is how we're planning to invest our funding, they were still not answering the question that this person was talking about, right? And so for us, it was reiterating how that was prime center. And by doing that, they would come to address everything else that they were trying to address for the broader immigrant community. And so I think that that's one of the things that we have been doing, in addition to the millions that we have been talking about. Black immigrant undocumented communities are priority for funding. And so if you have a Black undocumented sibling living in Washington State, tell them to say hello to us and we got some money for them, because we make sure that our money walks the talk and that people get the money that they need. And we know that there's just disproportionate effects of how COVID has impacted our communities. And we know it's all structural and everything else, but we just want to make sure that we put the money where our mouth is. And so ensuring that our Black undocumented siblings are a priority for funding. But beyond that, in terms of how we've been merging this conversation of abolishing ICE, abolishing CBP, and now abolish the police or defund the police, wherever we're at, right? It's been a little tough. I won't say that it's been easy for our communities to understand, how we benefit from anti-Blackness, right? I was in LA, we were walking downtown, and all of a sudden we were going through the callejones, which is like the little essentially where like the little stores, the community stores are at, and we see military cars going by, and I hear communities saying like, oh, it's the protesters and Black people fighting. It was like, wait, what? Like, how do you relate that to already putting out fault someone else? And so we know that those are deeper conversations that need to be funded and invested so that there's broader community building and bridge building, so that those conversations can move people into understanding how we're both, how our communities, while not at the same level, there's iterations of similar impacts in our communities. And so, yeah, I think that has been a little bit of the work in progress, and to connect how police, while they're law and order, they have yet to really do law and order. And so that it's really an attack to all of our communities and just the persecution of our communities very similarly.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Joy?
Yeah, such a good question, and thank you everyone for answering it. And I feel like I'm learning so much as a panelist. So very grateful for this question. For us as a Black-led org, dismantling anti-Blackness both internally in terms of individuals as well as our org is just kind of like forever work. We know there's just so much internalized anti-Blackness that we have to combat within ourselves. We're constantly, I would say, as a team, having conversations around, perfectionism that I mentioned before, and sense of urgency, but also like respectability politics, and trying to live with a contradiction of operating in this like nonprofit world that was like never designed for us to thrive in. And how do we make ourselves look, the most professional and have the best, the grant applications and all these things, when for a lot of the time, it's just a lot of labor and it's very tiresome. And a lot of it is just, frankly, just very anti-Black in how we have to like show up and navigate spaces. But I would say it's forever work, because we also know that even though we're a Black-led org, there's just so much work that we need to do, and to check ourselves and hold ourselves accountable. we were really excited as a team to like adopt this Black queer feminist lens, mostly because we've been, there's like a few organizations around the country that like we definitely have crushes on, that we're like obsessed with from the distance and like learning from and like seeing how they've been navigating their spaces and pushing back. And even though a lot of us had a lot of those words kind of, we may not had those exact words, but we've been living those things personally. It was a nice day when we all kind of agreed that we wanted to hold ourselves accountable, that as we move through the world as a Black-led org, that it's not enough for us just to reach out to, you know, just the folks who are more privileged within our community, and that it's not enough for us to say that we serve all Black people, but like forget Black undocumented, for example, that was just mentioned. Like there's so much that I'm excited about doing, but I also know it's like messy work too, which is, I think sometimes like the most rewarding work, is that we have to have very tough conversations with folks who want to support us and who want to work with us, to see like where they are on their journey. So we've been doing some new conversations, and I think in the past, you know, if someone wanted to work with us, we were like, yeah, you're Black, I'm Black, that's enough, like let's do the things. And now we're like, no, we can't do that, we have to align on values, and we have to, and that's something I would say even in our 11-year history that we struggled with over the years, is how do we make relationships that are so you know, that are not transactional, and that we actually are building towards something, and that we're having those, you know, those messy conversations up front to see if we even align on how we define, you know, anti-Blackness, and how we're going to be moving to dismantle it. But yeah, there's so much work to do. I think also something that is really interesting in this moment with the uprising is, even with the best intentions, you know, it feels like everyone is, you know, trying to find their Black friend right now, or their Black organization to support, which is overwhelming, to be quite honest, for us. You know, it's exciting. We've never had, from like a donation perspective, we've never had a true, I'm like telling all the secrets, but a true like donor base. Like that's something that we struggled with for quite a long time, is that we were over reliant on grants or contracts with, you know, the city or something on those lines. And out of nowhere, we have all these exciting, you know, well-meaning, you know, allies who maybe want to be accomplices, who are excited about this work. And we still have to have those messy conversations. So like there's still a lot of labor, I think, as Black orgs, where we're like fed up and tired, and sometimes we don't want to have a conversation with another BIPOC group about why their like actions are anti-Black. And sometimes it's just like, whew, there's just a lot of layers there. But I would say it's been, as much as this is like a very stressful time, it has been interesting in this moment to have some conversations with groups that I never expected to be interested in. Letting them know that this is not like something you can go to one training and check that off the box, that you like understand, you know, Black issues. Like I did it. Like, no, this is ongoing work. This is forever work. It's going to require you to be uncomfortable and to check yourself and to check others and understand your privilege and how it relates to mine. And it's just been a very interesting time, but a draining time at that. But I'm kind of still in this hopeful moment that we're going to move forward. I've also kind of accepted the fact that I probably, you know, this is going to be work that will continue beyond me being, you know, being on this earth and existing, and that this is going to be, that I can't fix it all myself, but it's also work that I'm really excited about looking back on in a couple years of everything that we've accomplished and we pushed back on.
Thank you so much, Joy, for sharing that piece. And like, you know, really spilling the tea too a little bit there. You know, in this past year, Utopia's donor list has grown 100% within just this past year. But that 100% was 500 to now 1,000, right? It seems small, but that's huge for us, right? Like prior to, you know, starting to receive all of this money and the growth just over this year alone, we had to really take a step back and think about, oh, donor cultivation is a thing. You know, in this nonprofit industrial complex, we got to focus on that. And, you know, how do we better connect with individuals who are well-meaning, who are intentional, interested about this work, but carry them along with this journey. You know, it's also been something that we've been trying to work through as well. But folks has also been sharing some of the work, and I realized earlier when I was talking on this subject, I was speaking more of my personal story and not so much focusing on the work that we have been doing. Part of our Talanoa program works to bring people together to have difficult conversations. And some of those conversations have also had to do with anti-Blackness within our own Pacific community. It exists, y'all, and it's real. Racism exists on so many deep forms across a multitude of races and ethnicities. And the Pacific community, there's anti-Blackness that is very real. And we've been trying to lead folks into having those conversations, check their privilege, and realize what some of those harmful things are, and work to self-correct, right? And treating that sometimes radically, but also, you know, caring for folks and taking them on that journey. It's not an easy conversation to have, but our Black siblings need that from us. Also taking inventory. If you are in a position of power in your organization in whatever capacity, think about how you can help other Black folks or other Black business entrepreneurs in whatever capacity that you have as a decision maker in your organization. Take inventory of who is sitting on the board of other organizations that you're partnering with or organizing with. Take a look, y'all. Make sure that, you know, the representation shows diversity. And if not, then honey, find a different contractor. They're out there. Or if that relationship is that meaningful to you, let that partner or, you know, a business know how you feel about it. Like, until I see more representation of diverse folks in your organization, in positions of power, then I don't foresee us having a long-term relationship. And that's crucial. It forces people and industries and people in decision-making positions to help create and elevate the pathways of Black people and people of color.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I really appreciated like the depth that you all answered that question. Internalized anti-Blackness, how to like be, you know, to have to look at like the intersections of how anti-Blackness shows up and the work that you're doing and how to support itself or yourselves. And I especially like the piece, like it's all good, but I especially liked talking about, you know, organizing donors so they're not that hard to deal with, so that you know you can, you know, donors know how to behave and know how to interact with you. You got a base, but then it's like a headache, and I'm just like, oh, that's another workshop. But I love the fact that you all are very honest and open with that, because this is a real topic and it's a really heavy topic. Given the amount of time that we have, I want to switch it off to my colleague Burke. Burke, have you been collecting any questions that for the panel from the audience?
We've had a lot of great comments and affirmations and folks really appreciating everything that's been said. We haven't had any questions specifically from the crowd yet, but I would also encourage folks to just like take themselves off mute and jump in if you want, because I'm sure folks do have questions. And so I'll give a little, oh, here we go. So Rebecca asked, what's something that you heard from another panelist that sparks something in you or that you connect with? I feel like I've seen that happening a lot with this panel, but is there a specific thing that really like sparked something in you that you wanna speak to and reflect back on?
Heck yeah. Yeah, in respect to that last question, a couple weeks ago, WA-BLOC had a retreat, and one of the topics that came up, and I wish we would have had this conversation. And so, Joy, thank you for saying everything that you said about like working on anti-Black racism within the org and within the members and the staff. I think we struggle with those same things, like respectability politics and, you know, like time management and what does it mean to be on time, and perfectionism, or and yeah, it's hard, but I think we've learned over the years, because majority of our staff is Black, just to have grace for one another and recognize that we're all trying to, you know, code switch constantly in so many other spaces. And so what does it mean for us to be liberated within our own organization? And like, of course, common courtesy, right? So like, if you're gonna be 20 minutes late to a meeting, you know, just like let folks know, you know, there's no like punishment there. There's no, you know, scratch on your professional character or anything. But yeah, I think we do need to have some more conversations, because I think we're all thinking it, but we're not putting any words to it. We're not actually like having the conversations. And I also like what Donato is saying about just being selective about who we're partnering with. Just because someone's Black doesn't mean that they're, you know, a good fit for organizing together. And also just all the comments about donor bases and how much they've grown so much recently. Man, hella white women are jumping into our donor base. Hella white women. And it's like, girl, what? Where have you been? And the reality, and we've been really vocal, I feel like, on our social media about, I think we kind of scared some donors, to be honest. There was like some crazy incident where a local restaurant, one of their managers was like calling a Black woman at CHOP the N-word, and then they like turned around, went to social media and said, we're donating $5,000 to WA-BLOC and creative justice. And we're like, hell no, you're not. Like, you're not about to like pacify your racist guilt or use capitalism as a passive route to escape, you know, actually having to have those hard conversations about anti-Blackness within your own BIPOC community. Like, that's not happening. I think we're in a position now, I mean, and we're so grateful to be selective about the money that we're accepting from folks, and hopefully moving forward, like moving away from some of the more institutional grants, because their values aren't aligned with ours in the way that we want them to be. Certainly not in the radical sense. Like, we're trying to do more than, you know, grow attendance. Like, what kind of metric is that? So yeah, I appreciate everyone's comments, especially on the last question, and gets me excited to know that other people are thinking about these same things and having some of these same challenges in respect to those things. So thank you all.
Sarah, if it's okay, can we share the last part of that story?
Yes. Yes.
Well, WA-BLOC and Creative Justice, I think, ended up putting pressure on that restaurant to actually redirect that money towards that lady who was wronged in the moment. So I think like still having that aspect was also really important, that you do need to do something to address the harm that was done, but you're not gonna like pay off your debts to these random orgs that you found.
Yeah. Well, imagine sending that back and being like, no. It's a big FU in my opinion, but it's the millions for me. I want to go back to something that Monse said earlier about holding our friends accountable even. That served as a really important reminder for me as well. That in doing this work, sometimes it is draining and we're not always at our best, but it's important that, you know, we hold even our friends accountable to remind them that we're still here and, you know, this or whatever is pressing still needs attention and your care. But yeah, that just wanted to share that as well.
I wanted to share, I remember when we were preparing this panel, we were all on email threads, and then I remember sending an email back, and then I received Joy's response statement. Oh my God, groundbreaking. I loved it. And I'll just read you the line that just like shook me. And it was like so real. It was the staff is inundated with messages, inquiries, and offers for all sorts. Please be patient while we take the time to respond, and be mindful that based on priorities and life experiences, we may have different definitions of urgency. Still be patient. I love that. I literally want to get it tattooed of how real that is, right? And I remember just being so overwhelmed that day. And Joy, you gave me so much life that day, and I just want to recognize I need to pay up those coins for just that love you gave me that day, because I want to recognize that that was labor from your side, and I just want put the money where walk the talk, right? Essentially, but yeah, just that was just so it helped me calm down that statement. It helped me realize that like time deadlines are socially constructed. They're racist oftentimes, like meeting those deadlines on whose deadline, like on who are we running towards, right? And so yeah, I just wanted to share Joy that response. And overall, this panel has been amazing, but just that response that just helped me be focused on I had an urgent deadline to submit to the state to manage some of those millions, and there was a wildfire. Like Monday was coming around, the deadline was right around the corner, and I was like, let me tell this state person how fucked up they are to putting these expectations on so quickly on us while the world's ending. Like, how dare you? And so I just, yeah, you gave me life to be powerful in that day.
I love
Oh my
that.
gosh, I'm just laughing at that email thread. People get mad sometimes. I'm like, yo, I can't, time is an illusion. Like, we'll figure it out. If I'm honest, to answer that question, I've been inspired by everyone on this panel and been like doing some like serious Googling and websites, like stalking to be like, ooh, this program is amazing. Like, I want to sit in and listen and learn. And particularly I'm thinking about the work that Utopia does with sex workers has been something that like staff has been talking about for a while, and wanted to like learn and uplift, and wishing that we had more organizations like Utopia in Portland. I know there's a few, but wanting particularly for some of the folks that we serve, I've just been inspired by and doing some like serious, I think since our first kind of was it a Google Hangout conversation a couple weeks back to plan this, has just been kind of really inspired by all the amazing just new programs that are popping up and programs that have been around for a very long time that I'm just now learning about. So I think I'm new to, this is like my first time being an ED, and it's the most stressful job I've ever had. And one of the best parts of it is getting a chance to like reimagine with staff some new projects and collaborations. And yeah, y'all made me a fan of Washington. Now I'm like, do I need to take a little trip? But I'm a fan now.
Well, we hope you're safe there in Oregon with all that's going on. Air quality in our area is improving, but we understand that folks in Oregon are still being evacuated.
Yeah, that's very real. And I do have, one maybe final question. And I hope that you can also respond to it with how can people like really engage with you? What's the best way for folks to engage with you? But given like the moment that we're in, the wildfires, I know that some of you have already talked about it. The smoke, the uprisings, help us to understand how long-term base building connects with this current moment, where there's like rapid social action and change.
And Mano, if I could just add on to that, we did have one other question a second ago from Nia, which kind of relates to what you're talking about. And Nia asked, what would you do, or how would you encourage folks that are interested but hesitant to join your work? Which I think speaks a little bit to what you're talking about too. So just wanted to throw that in.
Okay, I'll start and do my best to try to incorporate both questions. Let's see. Well, when we can't rely on institutions, we do really need a strong base. In our case of restorative justice practitioners and people who are ready to heal the community, people who are ready to facilitate transformative education and radical social justice activism, so that when abolition arrives, the community is fully ready to step in with a comprehensive infrastructure that can take the place of the institutions that don't serve us. When the pandemic hit, we became almost completely autonomous from the school, and now like a school starting virtually, it still feels like in a way we're autonomous. And I think that break was good in a way, because again, we're able to face the community and really focus on the community needs outside of the schools. So I think, and also be able to lean into other organizations, because we can't do it all. I think we all have really similar visions for what we want our communities to grow into, but not all of us are experts on like gentrification. Not all of us are experts on what community housing looks like or what policy change looks like at different levels. So trying to identify people's genius and people's mastery of areas that we want to see grow and change in our communities. So if you're looking, I think to get into this line of work, really listen to what the communities need and what the orgs are asking for, and see how you can contribute to the vision. Because you don't have to necessarily jump in and start working at a community org. The reality is that a lot of us are really small, and we can't afford to have high turnover year round. Like it takes so much capacity, you know, to hire somebody on and then have them change their mind. We're not a corporation. We just don't have the power to do that. So like, you know, start volunteering, and you can volunteer at as many orgs as you want to. And again, like try to identify how you can contribute. Like, are you interested in restorative justice? Can you help grow that pipeline of restorative justice practitioners? Or if you're just interested in healing the community, what does that look like for you, and how can you bring that to the community space? So I don't know, I hope that answers both of those questions. And I'll go ahead and pass it. Thank you.
I can chime in next. If you asked me a year ago if I thought I would be doing this work in this capacity, the answer would be no. I am so blessed that I am now able to do this work full time. But it was really born out of the need for giving back to the community that cared for me. And I think listening to that voice, if you're questioning whether or not you want to get involved in this work, honey, this work is going to happen with or without you. But you're welcome to start anytime. You know, and I didn't know as much as I know now, because it's not our responsibility to know everything, but we can learn absolutely anything. And there are people in this community that will care and can help guide you. And I've been so grateful to be able to stand on the shoulders of so many amazing trans women who came before me, and now can consider myself one amongst them, you know, like, hey, I'm doing some really cool things here. And you're welcome to join. Please learn about each of the organizations and how you can get involved. So many of us are also doing leadership cohorts or leadership institutes. Get involved in that. If you're questioning how you can build your own community or political power, let us show you, you know, learn from us, get involved. It's never too late.
Me go? Okay, I was like, you go, I go. Yeah, gosh, there's just, I don't even know. I'm like, I want to echo everything that's been said. I've learned so much in this role. I've never had this role before, and it's probably the hardest, but also the most rewarding to just be with my people. And I think I'll never forget, you know, one of my favorite like workshops with an organizer, Esperanza Tervalon Garrett, who's now in like Ashland, Oregon, who did a lot of work in Oakland. And I've done this little thing before, but it meant something different when I did it with her, just listing out who my people are and who are the folks that like who am I being held accountable by? You know, like who am I serving? Who am I building with? Who's calling me out and who's missing? And I'm just really thankful to be in this space. And as stressful as it is, it's so rewarding. And I'm just really excited to build with new folks. I've learned so much on this panel, but I'm excited about new folks wanting to just come and build with us and get their hands a little dirty and build kind of the future that we want. And but I think before we actually do like the building part, I'm ready to dream with some folks. So if there are some folks who are interested in just, you know, having happy hours and having great conversations where we're able to just think of a new way for us to navigate and be in this world, because something has to change. And I'm excited to be on like the right side of this change. But yeah, I'm inspired. I can't say anything more than what was said, but just really thankful to be a part. And definitely hit us up at either PAALF or PAALF Action Fund if you're an Oregon, if you're excited to do some work.
I kind of was like, it's been a long day, and today I think it's like, wait, which question am I answering? I'm gonna answer it a couple times. The one of like, I saw a really cool question of like, you know, well, how have you grown? And similar to Donato, this is the first time I get to be a director of an organization. And it makes me very proud to be a trans woman leading, not necessarily in its core a trans organization, because I get to queerify and make more trans friendly. Everybody else is like in your face. Trans people can also do all this other type of work, right? Like we're here, we're gonna stay, and it's beautiful. And I think it's been hard, but I remind myself of my ancestors. I remind myself that Donato has my back, that Ruby Colado in Washington, D.C. has my back, Bambi Salcedo in California, trans women who have done this work before me and who hold, you know, these director level positions, because there is a real push out culture for trans and gender non-binary people in our communities. There is, you know, these systems are not set up to see us thrive, and they still feel awkward with us. And so I think for me, I'm grateful to have a community that supports me. Now, I think in terms of the question about allied folks stepping into this work, you know, it's been in the beginning of this administration, I made a very clear stance that like I was not going to engage with a devil's advocate. If this administration could not tell you how bad things are, no me writing you a very extensive essay, the data, like there's nothing that was going to convince you. And so I'm working on people who are working their way there, but still have a couple questions. And where I start is asking them, why the hell are you here? And if they give me that wrong savior answer, I ask again, why the hell are you here? And until they tell me that they're here because they too have been hurt by this system that is killing our Black siblings, that doesn't allow our trans sisters to fucking thrive, right? Like I need to hear from them that they too have been hurt, because they cannot just look across the TV or hear that children are detained and not be hurt by that. And so I want to hear that from them, that they too have been hurt. And until I hear that, then let's build together. And so that has been a little bit of, yeah, the news of the hysterectomy just has me broken, honestly. It's just been really hard to hear that. I was like, you know, and I think that why I don't allow those people to take too much of my time is because white people have the audacity to claim that their fear is bigger than ours. That's, you know, white people have the audacity to claim that their fear is bigger than ours and somehow weaponize their fear and kill us and still claim that they're in fear. And so I'm done with that. I think I'm extremely done with just giving them the minute of my time. And I'm ready for people who are actually here to learn and to build solidarity and to know that they too have been in pain. So yeah. And yeah, WAISN, visit our website and you can volunteer there. and give money.
That's it. That's it. Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Make sure you have the information. The the link to all these organizations is in the was linked to the invitation that went out, and then there have been links in the chat. Make sure to give directly to these organizations. We're also here to say that this is the beginning of our fundraising week and a half, and Palmira, if you could put in the link for ways for you to engage and contribute. We have a couple of more events left. September 26th is our dinner event, and the 27th is our dance party. And in addition to that, I haven't checked, but I wanted to see if Sharday is still there to talk a little bit about giving projects. I just put up a link.
I'm here.
Hey.
Hey, yeah, just real quick, while we still have your attention and you're still super excited about all this organizing you just heard about, another great way to learn more about the work of these awesome, amazing community organizers is to join a giving project. And we have 2 coming up starting next month. We have forced displacement and migration, which will be led by my coworker Bana, and I will be leading the Black-led organizing giving project, which will be exclusive to people of the African diaspora. And Manu dropped the link in the chat, and you can take a look at the website for more information, and feel free to reach out to me directly if you have any more questions. And we'll talk more about this at the dinner, so be there.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate all of the panelists. Y'all are great. I hope you can stay in connection with each other and get the rest that you need. This has been really heartwarming for me, and I hope everybody who was able to see this and will be able to see this also gets, just gets inspired and continues to engage with movement work and make sure that you all are well resourced in all the ways.
Thank you so much, everyone. Monse, Sierra, Joy.
All right, y'all. You don't have to stay on this call, but you probably are already home or something like that.
Thank you all. Thank you, SJF. Thank you to all the panelists. Thank you for all the attendees. So surprised and inspired by this virtual event. The turnout was amazing. So appreciative. Thank you.
Likewise, thank you to everybody. Thank you. Shout out to Palmira, to Mano, to Alise, and to everybody who helped put this event together, and to the panelists who I've learned so much. Just thank you very much.
Thanks, y'all. Be safe, please, and take care of yourself. I appreciate you.
Likewise, especially down there in Oregon. Take care. Bye, everyone. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you at the dinner.